We'll call the meeting to order at 7:05 for the Milton School Building Committee. As we typically do, just take attendance for people in attendance. So in the room is Scott Tereshak, um, Carrie, and then online, we'll just go as I call you, as I see you, Carrie Hurley,
Here.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yeah.
Mark Loring,
Here.
Nathan Hutto,
Here.
okay, Superintendent John Phelan,
Here.
and Dr. John Redden.
Here.
Cool. All right. Second thing on our agenda is approval of past minutes. So I sent out earlier today the minutes from our last meeting. So just don't know if people had a chance to review them, if there's any comments. Hearing any. So if none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 15, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
Okay,
from
September 15th,
September 15th, 2025. There
Okay,
it is.
is there a second?
Second.
I'll give that to Carrie. All right. Any comment, any discussion? None. So just do a roll call vote for voting members in the room. Tim Lombard, perfect.
I am present.
What I meant. All right. So we're just voting on the minutes from
Oh, excellent.
the last meeting. So Scott made the motion, Carrie seconded it. So it's essentially a roll call vote. So in the room, Scott,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
myself, yes. Online, Carrie,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yes.
and Glenn.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Item number 4, new business, or 4A, is MSBA Module 1, MSBA enrollment projection. So I think this is the majority of kind of why we're here tonight to talk about. So as you guys are aware, we got an enrollment projection from MSBA, I believe in early October. And then, just want to fill everybody in from a follow-on meeting that we had with MSBA following that. So MSBA had provided enrollment projections and looked at the enrollments for what we would need to do for a new middle school, grades 7 and 8, a new elementary school, and then an addition or a renovation to the elementary school at Collycott Cunningham. So with the enrollment numbers they provided for middle school, their base enrollment number that they had was lower than what we have today. Their number was 612 based on the documentation that they sent us. But at the meeting that we had with them, there were additional factors that added on to this. So it essentially at the end of it brought the number up for enrollment to 655 students. And the way it does that is the 612 students that they did for the middle school, they round to the nearest fifth. So for 612, they round down to 610 as a starting point. They looked at 3 factors that I just call as adders for that. So they added 15 additional children or students for student migration for kids that are most likely going to stay here. They added another 10 for a factor that they called out of district adjustment, which is similar. If we build a new school, most likely kids are more likely to stay in the district than travel elsewhere. And then for the housing, for the information and data that we provided to them for housing, they added on 20 students. So those 45 additional students to the base 610 got us to 655 students. So what I'll do is I'll pause there, and if we want, for the enrollment projections, let's dive into the middle school component of it first. And then we can take on the elementary, new school, the elementary edition after, if that makes sense.
So Sean, just looking at the enrollment process they put in the slideshow, we're at the point now we're at MSBA actions, or are we at the district actions, or it seems like we're near the end?
Yeah, so for in regards to module one, we're coming to the end of it. So, and I had a call with MSBA today just to go over these numbers one more time, just to make sure anything I was relaying to this committee was accurate. The enrollment projections they gave us were initial ones. They're finalizing a letter that will document all these options on there, and they're going to issue that to us at the end of the week. Upon retrieval of that, the town essentially has to accept it, or we can challenge it. That's the point of this meeting too, is to see if there's other factors that we want them to consider to either up or reduce the enrollment. But once we come to a consensus as our committee, and we're in agreement, the school committee will also have to be in agreement, take a vote and sign it. And then similarly, the select board will need to do that too. Once those entities do it, it'll be back to MSBA and essentially we'd be progressing beyond module one. Timeline for that right now is they're targeting us for their February board meeting. So it will not be on the December meeting. Obviously, I think it's very soon. And the board meets every 2 months. So for us right now, from a timeline perspective, they're getting this information to us at the end of the week. And then essentially I wanted us to kind of be prepared so that we're not holding up select board or school committee on making their decision on it. The one other, just for everyone's information, I did ask MSBA at our initial meeting and repeated it today, that if we were to ask for modifications based on certain data that we think might be flawed, we don't want to do that to introduce a delay further beyond February. And any of the questions that we have or anything that we may have will not delay it beyond February based on what they've told me today.
Okay.
So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of, whatever we've been diving into on our own for this, is talk about it. I'll do my best to tally up, notes that we have for these or questions in and above what they gave us and get that back into their hands.
Sean, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So, very recently in the last few years, MSBA has gotten very good at enrollment projections because it used to be a more of a contentious issue between the MSBA and districts, because districts would bring in outside data points to challenge the numbers. So with their newly created way of coming up with this data, do you see any holes that you feel that we have the evidence to rebut, or do you feel comfortable with this number?
Yeah, the only one that came up to me, and I posed the question, if you recall, at the meeting with MSBA, was their kindergarten enrollment. I believe it was in the 2028 school year, had us coming down by 22 students. And the housing production plans that we sent them at that time, I think had over 140 new 2 and 3 bedroom and 4 bedroom units coming on. If you give me a second, I'll pull it up. I think that was probably one of my data points that I was touching on. And that's what led into the discussion where they brought on those adder numbers that were there as part of it. So that's, I didn't really have a chance to further dive into how essentially the adder number that they gave us was 20 additional students, but they took away 22. So it seemed like a break even. And I just pull that off. I'm just going to share my screen for a second.
Just a comment while you're doing that,
Yeah.
technical support. It's interesting that the number of the plus 75 housing for option 2 that's on your email and the plus 75 housing for the option 3, which were new elementary school or renovation. Are they saying that, I assume that they're looking at the downturn of students that might go private between grades 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 as the rationale behind the only the 20 plus there. I'm interested why the housing number should not be different. If the housing number is 75, then it's 75. I'm interested to, I wonder if that's a pushback point, but unless they feel like 75 of those students would come in at the elementary level, but would not go further into the district's 7 through 12 grades. And then secondly, we're seeing our enrollment at the high school jump back up in 9th and 10th grade because a lot of those students do come back, but that wouldn't impact the 7th and 8th grade building square footage and enrollment numbers.
Okay. So with some of those, John, too, could you just put those in an email to me so I can have
Sure.
those? Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And let me just share my screen to show you what I was looking at before. Yeah. And just let me know when that helps. Here it is. So in school year 2027-2028, they had us at 350 students coming into kindergarten. The next year, it drops down to 328. And when we looked at the housing production plan that we gave them, the total number was 102 new units that were coming on. There were 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. So those data points didn't correlate to me. And the reason I focused on it is, for these enrollment projections, the number that they use, the 612, comes out of lower numbers. You have to 312 and 300 right here. You have to read this data on a slant because it graduates every year as it goes down. But the 302, which was to me seemed like a low number, when I traced that back, it traced right back to that number that brought down by 22. What they did, just from taking their PDF and kind of breaking it up a little bit, and this is the nerd of me that goes into the data. They had like a basic survival rate that they said was high for kindergarten, which we all know. Parents are moving here with children entering the schools, and then a survival rate above 1. So this survival rate is basically the averages that they had for their projections here, or at least that's what they used for their projection. And then basically use that all the way out to come up to basically equate out to their numbers. So I agree with you, John, the way they were doing the numbers, for how they calculated their averages were fine, but I just think there were a few data points. Like I said, this 302 seemed a little bit lower than what I was expecting. But I think pushing back on a couple of things that you mentioned too, or just letting them know that we're seeing more students coming back into the school will be good. So I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, so I'm just going to open it for others to kind of talk for a little bit.
I guess my comment would be that I'm wondering how hard we push and how that weighs against it being at the meeting in February and to get this up and running. This enrollment number is super important. It does stay with us forever, and it can't be challenged after the amount is voted on. So it impacts square feet. It impacts so many different things. So I'm just wondering, what our strategy might want to be if we have something solid to go with it, and if not, just to move on.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point too, because some of the other analysis I sent out to the committee too, if you recall, I looked at the square foot baseline. So what we had, so for everyone's information, we had a program that we were working with before with Arrow Street. Our enrollment number was 670 that we based it on. And we had a square footage. Let me pull up another spreadsheet so I just don't go off. Share.
It's strange how when you look at the data, the 2 years that they're focused on, the numbers drop off significantly from the high to the low. Like you go from 363 kids in eighth or in 4 or 5 in year 2026, and then that number drops down from 363 to 276. So it's 87 kids drop out in middle school. Is that in line with what we see today? That big a number?
I think that's how they base it right now. They look at the kids that are leaving right now and have that as their scale factor. So they do a look back at 10
Yeah.
years before, and they look at what those attrition rates are as kids are graduating up. But that is so that they look at it based on that and then make their projections based on the other numbers that they're pulling in for births. The the adders that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, those are what they're saying is they'll see more of those kids staying than leaving. So it's like it skews some of those numbers, or it's a scalar that they put associated with it.
Okay.
But
just to answer your question, I just
Yeah.
have the enrollment, the local enrollment that we have here as an example. We are in the current 25-26 year. Our sixth grade is 344, and when that grade was in fifth grade, that group was 375. So we probably lost about 30. We certainly did 60. Jimmy, 60 is double that. I would say between 25 and 30 might be more accurate. I haven't been around for a while, but that does seem like a steeper deduction than what we realize from year to year.
Yeah, that was one other that I looked at, and I'll just pull up the spreadsheet again just to dive in.
Yeah, I was just trying to compare to 5 to 8 to get a feel for what that is. It consistent with what it's been in the past?
Yeah, there's survival rates. So when you look at these numbers that are here, up till fourth grade, going into fifth grade, they're about 1. So it's pretty consistent all the way across. And then from fifth to sixth grade, you lose roughly 7%, 7.5%. And then the next year, another 7.5%. So those are where they're seeing the dive. And I think that's one of the data points we might be able to push back on. Just with some of the housing stock data, some of the stuff we have now. And it's tough to look at those percentages with the adders they have to know kind of how much they've skewed it on their own with just giving a whole number as an adder at the end of it.
Yeah.
But so the other point that Superintendent Phelan raised too is, how does this affect the overall square footage of our program? So one of the things that I was trying to do that I provided to everybody is so we had our space summary that we did with MSBA with Arrow Street previously in 2024, 2025. And we looked at our program that we had here, which is on the left in blue. The overall program for that had a net square footage for the middle school only of about 84,000 square feet. We'll zoom in just so people can see. So this was kind of the overall program that we came to at 84,000 square feet programmatic. If you recall, we actually had a much larger program before that. So through the iterations that we did in the design, if you remember, we're at 200,000, a little over 200,000 square feet through visioning sessions. We scaled that down to about 165,000 square feet through some revisions that the architects did. And then we came to this number. I say 100,000. You have to take the grossing factor into account. And we scaled that 160,000 down to 127,000. And we felt at that point that was like a right size for what we were doing for the much deeper program dive that we did. The new program that we have with MSBA, if we plug in the enrollment number that they provided us at 612, 655 that they gave us, sorry about that, not 612, through their spreadsheet, it populates what all those building areas should be. And their building area net is 75,000 square feet. So we're roughly about 10,000 square foot of net programmatic area that were below from what we were before. The majority of this 10,000 square feet that we've reduced is essentially, from the layout I gave earlier, were the art and music spaces, which were the auditorium, I think was the big one. So chorus room, piano lab, auditorium with stage, and 350 seat auditorium. That equated for about 8,000 or 8,600 square feet of that program delta that's on there. The other portion of it too was essentially the gymnasium that had some there too. When I looked at these and basically those type of things, because they're not reimbursed by MSBA, we could still add them into the project. We just wouldn't be paid or reimbursed at the rate that we're given. And that plays into the overall program of the effective rate of what we're going to get for this reimbursement as part of the project. So I think, for us, while we're looking at these, it would be helpful to understand, at 670 students, which was our previous number, what that true delta was. So I just plug that in real quick and see what it comes up to. Open it up to any discussion too, if people have any. Yeah, so it dropped it from 9,000 square foot programmatic, 9,240 to 8,088. So it's like 1,200 square foot delta. If we're talking the difference of 655 to 670. So for the 25 extra kids that we're talking about, from a programmatic standpoint, it's minimal when we're talking square footage. So that was why I kind of went through that analysis a little. So, whether I think our number is 655 or 670, I'm fine pushing back and getting a higher number. But I think if our pushback isn't successful to bump our numbers up, I'm pretty comfortable with 655 right now from just a building square footage that we have. And then essentially it's going to lead into what additional things as we go through visioning program and stuff like that we're going to add on to the project.
John, I would agree with that. I'm comfortable pushing back a little bit, but I think the square footage is minimal. And I think that if the MSBA feels pretty solid, they usually lean on their numbers pretty hard. So I think we're still in good shape.
Okay. Any other discussion or points from members?
I might have missed this, Sean, but did they share with you how they calculate like the offsets, the survival and the housing, the add-ons?
Well, I think the adders, they did not go into as much detail. It may be in the letter that's coming for some of the information that's there. You know, for me, it took some work. It's almost like you have to break down their spreadsheet or see how they did it. They don't give you the actual spreadsheet. So, but if you want, I could happily ask the question to see what their response is.
Well, I'm just curious, based on particularly how we zeroed in on 2028, and there's many large projects that are due to be coming online. And to me, I'm not quite sure I agree with the add-ons for that based on, but it's kind of like gut.
Yeah,
So
it's hard to say how you disagree with it, but you don't know how it's going to compute the
right.
amount.
I mean, I do agree though that for 1,200 square feet, I don't know what it's going to get us, but I just, I would feel better if I knew how they kind of add on. So I don't know. It's just, I don't terribly understand this very well. I'm like hanging on by a thread, but, it seems, I'm actually very happy that we're not that far off. It's kind of validating, quite frankly.
Yep. Yeah, the component to it is mainly for me is like, do we anticipate our enrollment numbers that we have as of today to go down? Because I think right now we're roughly about 670, or that's what we based our numbers on. And then do we anticipate, in 5 years when we're, building out this project, is the number actually going to be below there? The one other thing that they did say, and this may ring some bells with people too, is they look at space utilization of an 85% utilization, meaning like some rooms that dual purpose for certain things over the course of a scheduling. And that was something that we went through with Arrow Street and PMA previously, where we're looking at spaces, and that's kind of how we started fine tuning stuff down too. So this may have a tighter factor on there too. So, and Mark, I see you have your hand raised. Go for it.
Yeah, I agree with Carrie that it's nice to see that we're not that far apart. And I'm glad to hear from John. I think he has the most experience kind of any of us here of having gone through this project and seeing what these enrollment numbers mean in terms of their impact further down the line. So if he feels comfortable, that means a lot to me. And then again, just appreciate all the work you're doing. I think I generally agree with all these points. Like our current 7th/8th is 662. It's really never quite been that high before. This is by far a high watermark for 7/8, by about 10% over where we were even last year. So that's I guess my only concern. I think if you look down the pipe, that we were anticipating this jump because of the really small 8th grade class last year and those larger kind of cohorts eventually moving through the snake up through the middle school grades. But at this point, they are there. And unless we start getting kind of large incoming classes, I don't anticipate there being kind of that same 10% increase in enrollments over the next so many years. But yeah, so I think overall, looking at the numbers, I think if we could boost it up a little bit, that would be helpful. But otherwise, we're pretty darn close and feel good about it.
Yeah.
I would say, Sean, everybody's pretty comfortable around these to the extent that we understand them, to Carrie's point. But I wouldn't want you to go expending any sort of political capital or credibility that you have needlessly if we are comfortable. So if there's a risk of that and we're comfortable with the numbers, I'm comfortable with that. But if you're comfortable that this doesn't diminish our position in their eyes, then I'd say, yeah, go ahead and push back a little bit.
Yeah, I'm like that. I think they're agnostic to political stuff, so I'm not. You know, what I mean, my main one was I didn't want to push back to get additional square footage that causes a delay that pushes us out. Because one of the things, our program, our 270-day timeline ends on January 31st. They would extend us an additional 30 days if we wanted to, but then we would miss that February meeting, you know, and bump us out to a further meeting. So I asked them, you know, if we did ask for revisions or anything like that, could they guarantee it wouldn't push us out? And they did. So that's why I'm comfortable doing some pushback and
Okay.
stuff like that. One of the ones that kind of always jumped in my mind is, you know, they round to the nearest five. So at 612, they go down to 610. If it was 613, they would have gone up to 615. So I think there is some room to do it for them. It's similar to, I think, the consensus everyone's saying is like push a little bit, but you know, let's get moving. And the other reason it's important, as John mentioned too, was this is our only chance to do this. Once we set this number, we're in agreement and we can't go back, or we could go back, but it resets the whole thing. We go back to module one, and now we're much further out. So, yeah, Gary, you have your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we're probably all thinking on some level about the current situation we're in, and based on the analysis that they did back in the day, probably, I mean, it sticks in my head that, you know, if they had pushed back a little bit on square footage, then maybe we wouldn't be doing this now. So I think I think it's worth, if it's not going to cause too much agita and disrupt the schedule, I do think it's just that rounding point you made. You know, that could be the difference. So I don't typically take anything on first pass. So I think that there's certainly enough points here that have been made to just, and I don't think it would be a lot of, you know, I don't think it would be much brain damage to the folks to just look at our inquiries and say, oh yeah, this is how we do it. You know, it seems to me like it would be pretty simple.
Yep.
And then would feel good that we did what we could to make sure that the number's right.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the other one, just when we're talking rounding numbers, their adders are all based in 5, 15, 10, 20. Those were the numbers that they had. So there could be some additional rounding that they're doing there to bring it down. And if so, you know, keep it as a whole number and add them all up, then round maybe. But
If you can get them to round in 5 different places, there's 25 kids right there.
yeah, exactly. So that's fine. So the enrollment that they provided, just to kind of shift gears a little bit, you know, from that topic, it was only for the middle school. So the preschool component, we're allowed to set our enrollment as we see that program being. So the previous program that we had, when the square footages that was giving was only for the middle school. We still have the separate preschool component of it. So that for us allows some flexibility for what we're doing there. So for the middle school, I think we're all in agreement. Push back a little bit, not too hard. We'll pick some finer points. So Superintendent Phelan, if you could just, you know, send an email with the points you were making. You know, Carrie, if you could just send me an email, you know, asking you know, how the numbers were broken down or played into it. I can relay those to them. And ideally, if you get those done this week, so I can get it into them, it'd be appreciated. The other one, so the middle school option, they also gave the elementary school option, and their number for the elementary school, just for everyone's information, was 495 students. So again, for just confirmation of kind of validation of what we've been doing for like 6 years, they're seeing the elementary school, if we were to build a brand new standalone elementary school, they would have an enrollment number of 495 on here. And what that assumes is the existing schools that they have would have an 85% utilization factor. So they basically take all the enrollment, split it up between all the schools, and say this new school would have to house 495 students. So that was a number I was actually happy with when I saw that one for the elementary. There is an option for the renovation or addition, and that number they had was saying 1,400 plus pre-K, but all this would be laid out kind of in that letter that comes to us this week. But I think the main one we'll probably push back on is the middle school, mainly because that's what we have the most programmatic data on, that we can do an apples to apples comparison.
So they're going to issue a letter with 3 different options in it.
So it's essentially it's a letter. The 3 options that we're looking at right now that we have to look at through them is an addition renovation to Collicott Cunningham, a new elementary school, and a new middle school. I don't know if they're going to have us also look at like an addition renovation to Pierce, but we'll see what they propose in that letter.
Okay.
And then once we have that letter, it makes it a lot easier, because at the meetings there was a lot of discussion that went on. And for me, I was just trying to focus in on how they got to the number.
So does that mean when we go into the next step, we have to explore all those different options?
Yes.
Before? Okay.
Yeah. So my understanding going into it was the addition renovation Collicott Cunningham as part of feasibility, a new elementary school as part of feasibility, and the new middle school as part of feasibility. Whether they want us to, like I said, do an option for add addition renovation to Pierce, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. And then at the end of feasibility is when a decision's made on that.
Correct. Yeah, we picked one and then go into schematic design, which was the one of the follow-on modules to that. Take schematic design, and I'm going off the cuff here. Take schematic design to similar to what we did before to get a good hard number on it, and then we'll know what the number of the project's going to be at that point. Okay. The other one with just the reduced square footage that we're doing too, potentially could be a reduction in the overall project costs. So that's one of the other ones with a smaller, enrollment or smaller square footage we can look at too as we're going. So let's see if there's any other questions or anything on that, just while we're talking. I don't see any. I think we did our best to beat that horse. The project schedule. So, just moving on to item 4, new business, item B, project schedule 2026. So overall, I think our schedule right now, like I said, is we'll be going in front of the board, the MSBA board, for approval to graduate from Module 1 to Module 2 in February. So I would assume we're going to onboard an OPM shortly thereafter. So we'll assume March. And I'm just bringing this up mainly for future meetings and everyone's kind of schedules. So I don't see much happening between now and February or end of January. And then in March, we'll onboard an OPM. And then once we get that OPM, I think we're going to see a faster ramp up for, essentially the rhythm that we're at before. Let's see if anybody has any questions on that. Other than getting a nice break till spring, basically.
We're not locked into going back to that same list of when we go out and when we issue an RFP seeking those proposals.
No, so all that is scrapped. So the RFP that we'll issue for an owner's project manager or an OPM will be a fresh RFP that goes on the street. Anybody and everybody can apply for it. And knowing MSBA is kind of backing it this time. When we did the RFP last time for the OPM, I think we had like three. It was left field, Vertex, and PMA.
It might be worthwhile for us to look back at that old literature that we had.
Yeah. I think because it's an MSBA project, we're gonna have a lot more interest in it, knowing that essentially the funding's behind that. Before we didn't have similar funding that we have now.
Yeah.
Okay. So if nothing else on that, move on to item 5, which is future meeting dates discussion. As I was saying, I'm not anticipating anything between now and end of January. If something happens to come up, I'll ping everyone to see. But again, I'm assuming we're gonna meet back with MSBA and the attendees to the meeting. The initial head from MSBA may have to have another meeting with them. So the attendees were myself, Mark Loring as vice chair, Superintendent Phelan, chair of the select board, Ben Zoll, and Nick Polano. And Katie Blake, I think Katie was on too. So it'll probably be just those attendees, and we'll get this completed. So as far as the future meeting date right now, we don't have much on our books to dive into, so it gives us a little more freedom. So see if there's any questions on that.
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right, and so last thing on the agenda is adjournment. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Scott,
Second.
second by Mr. Loring. Roll call vote. We'll start with the people in the room. Scott Tereshek,
Yes.
Tim Lombard,
Yes.
Carrie Hurley,
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
Mark Loring,
Yes.
and Nathan Huddle.
Yes.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you guys very much, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.